All right, everybody, New Scott here, and I'm joined today for the first time with Nick. Wrestlemania was last night, and we're going to talk about that here today. But first, how you doing, Nick?
I'm not bad. Thanks for having me, New Scott. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Explain to everybody who you are, where you come from, and your involvement in Maritime Wrestling before we get started here.
Sure. So I have been a wrestling fan since I was 9 years old. I'm 22 now, so you do the math.
I'm so old. That's the math.
Oh, I know, right? Imagine how people older than me must feel. Yeah, so I've been a wrestling fan since I was 9. I got involved in Maritime Wrestling for the most part, really, a couple of years ago. There's a promotion around here, which some of you may know, named Wrestle Center, and they needed sort of a social media guy and someone to just kind of help out at the shows. And so I filled that role. That led me to be commentating on some of the Voltage episodes. Wrestle Center's been pretty quiet lately. So I've just sort of been enjoying my time as a fan again, not really needing to fulfill any duties. And so, yeah, I was happy to watch WrestleMania just as a fan. I hadn't watched much of the build-up, so I was excited to just sort of sit and watch it cold.
What do you find a big difference from when you were just sitting in the crowd at Wrestle Center to then then being backstage at a show?
No, I didn't. The Maritime Wrestling community is pretty small. I mean, you know that better than anybody. Everybody sort of knows everybody. So I had already known a lot of the Wrestle Center roster, and then the ones that I didn't were all super great, super nice. I didn't find it too hard of a transition at all, no.
All right. Anyone give you a hard time about being backstage?
No, actually.
Was Brody Steele around when you came back?
He was not. No. He was not. I like to think that I show the proper respect that these guys and women deserve. We didn't have any girls on the show that time except Winner, but I like to think I show the proper respect that they deserve. So, you know, I don't think it was an issue on their end either. No one gave me a hard time or anything like that. Yeah, so no, but Brody Steele wasn't there, so I'll count myself lucky on that regard. Though I've had great interactions with him in the past online, so I've never actually met him in person. But
it's just a respect thing, just like you said, like
absolutely,
you have to show it, like it's just how it works. Like, but anyway, WrestleMania was last night.
Mm-hmm.
We talked for a few minutes on Messenger, and then I'm like, "Well, we got to get this on film." We have. I personally have a very different perspective of pro wrestling than most people, most fans, everybody. I look at it a little differently. What were your thoughts on the show? We just talked about the bigger matches right now, specifically the tag match: Ronda Rousey, Kurt Angle against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon.
Yep. Overall, I liked WrestleMania. As I mentioned, I didn't watch any of the build-up. The last full WWE show that I watched was Royal Rumble. So I didn't watch any of the build-up. So I went in pretty cold, and for the most part, I enjoyed what I saw. There wasn't really any matches that stood out to me as being particularly weak. And I thought all the matches that I was looking forward to going in, for the most part, delivered. So overall, I thought it was a thumbs-up show.
What did you think of that match in particular, and how Ronda, like talk about what we talked about?
Yeah, for sure.
Before we came on here.
So the Ronda Kurt Triple H Stephanie match, overall, I enjoyed, but I did have my issues with it. My main issue is that I thought Ronda looked a little weak. She was dominant in spots, but as I told you, I wasn't a fan with Stephanie defending the submissions. I thought the match went a little long. I thought if you cut out maybe, I'm trying to think now off the top of my head, maybe 2-3 minutes, I think it would have been a little tighter and flowed a little better. You could have lost a couple of those submission defenses. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought Ronda looked tremendous, and I'm really excited to see her in a singles match.
You said she looked weak. She took it. No, she took it to Hunter. She had
She
him in
did.
submission.
Yes, absolutely.
She was striking him
Absolutely.
up against the corner. She
Yep.
was 100 and when she fought, she was 135 pounds. He's
Yep.
like 270, 280, 290,
Yep.
somewhere around there. How does that make her look weak?
So, in terms of the Triple H stuff, I'm gonna separate the match here as we're talking about it.
Okay.
There was Ronda versus Triple H, which she was the Ronda that we all want to see, and she was the Ronda that kicked ass. And then there was Ronda versus Stephanie, which for the most part I wasn't that much of a fan of. In the beginning, when she first got the hot tag, I thought it was great. She was pulling her down by her hair, throwing her around. I loved that. And then that's where the match really started to slow down for me. After that first submission attempt, I understand, it's WrestleMania. Stephanie's a very important person in the WWE. You want to give her a bit of a due as well. But Stephanie's not a wrestler, certainly not a full-time wrestler. So for me, you're bringing in Ronda Rousey. You're calling her the baddest woman on the planet. The fact that it took her, I believe, 5 times to finish off Stephanie with a submission, that to me does make her look a little weak. Now, I agree with what you said. Against Triple H, she was perfectly dominant, and it was tremendous. But with Stephanie, I would have appreciated, as a fan, through my viewing, I would have appreciated a couple less submission defenses from Stephanie. The saves, if it's Triple H breaking it up, if it's, I believe there was one point where Triple H threw Kurt at Ronda, that works for me. That I totally get that. But when it's technical sort of MMA aspects, where Ronda is fighting for the armbar and Stephanie is defending the armbar through her jiu-jitsu skills, which she learned, and maybe perhaps on Raw they showed a video of her training. I don't know if they did.
They talked about her.
Okay,
not specifically jiu-jitsu, but they showed clips and stuff of her training. Yes. Okay,
so now knowing that rectifies it a little bit for me. I still think it went a little overboard. I think 1 or 2 defenses I'm fine with, but once we start getting 3 and 4, that's where I start checking out a little bit, and I go, okay, Ronda should be destroying her at that point.
And I completely understand what you mean and where you're coming from, but you're looking at, and in to your credit, this is how they brought her in. They brought Ronda Rousey in as a killer. But this is because she went in there and she armbarred legitimate world-class athletes, some Olympic gold, silver medalists, I think one of them was, in mere seconds.
Yeah.
But this is where you have to completely separate the two. She's no longer that. In theory, Brock Lesnar should just come in and crush everybody too. Former UFC World Heavyweight Champion as well. But this is where you have. We'll get to that. This is this is where you have to completely separate the two. In my opinion, she is no longer a mixed martial artist. She comes in with that credential behind her, but now she is a professional wrestler. You have to suspend that disbelief with her 100%, because if it was real, she would come in, and if she beat actual fighters in 14 seconds, people that have never stepped foot and done anything wouldn't last 2.
Of course.
You have to suspend that disbelief. Stephanie McMahon defending that armbar as much as she did led to her, this is just my opinion now, led to that big pop once she was finally able to sink it in. She fights it off. Hunter breaks it off. She fights it off. It off. Kurt gets thrown into her. She fights it off. And then she finally pauses with it, looks down, and then sinks it in, and the crowd goes absolutely crazy. That's where where a lot of people, if there's going to be a knock, is going to be because they're not separating the two. She's not the fighter anymore. She's now a professional wrestler. And there's a magic to professional wrestling, which is what makes it completely different.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to break down the sort of what makes wrestling, then yes, I completely agree. The multiple defenses, of course, led to the huge pop at the end. But for me, and this goes sort of back to what you mentioned with Brock Lesnar, there's a way that you can use the magic of pro wrestling to protect Ronda's submissions in a way that I felt they didn't last night. Like I said, breaking up the submissions, that works for me, and I get that. And again, I didn't see the training video, so maybe they touched on it a little bit. But Stephanie, who they've acknowledged is not a wrestler, and anytime she's really won a match, has been through nefarious means where she has outside help, or if I recall, if you remember the Nikki Bella, or the Brie Bella match, I should say, you have someone attacking her opponent, and then she capitalizes on it. So they've acknowledged in the booking that Stephanie is not capable of hanging with a professional wrestler in the ring. So now you're bringing in Ronda Rousey, who has the credentials and is being billed through the booking as this world killer who is going to just destroy everybody. And then you have Stephanie being able to, for a little while, hang with her somewhat in the ring, and that is where I start to check out. I agree, you do have to separate. She's not the Ronda Rousey of 5 years ago, both in terms of her in WWE and also in terms of her in MMA. Let's face it, her last 2 fights in the UFC, she got murdered. So in that regard, she's also not the same. But I do think
everybody
the defense
loses,
is just
that's
true. Everybody does lose.
The only undefeated fighter of all time is Floyd Mayweather, and he doesn't attack. He's a 100% defensive fighter. Everybody loses. You can say, oh, she got her head knocked off, and then Amanda Nunes lit her up. Chuck Liddell lost. Anderson Silva lost. Oh,
Chuck Liddell got destroyed by Rich Franklin.
George St. Pierre got knocked out in his prime. So her losing means absolutely nothing. From my perspective, her losing those fights, she stepped into that cage. It could have easily happened to the other person.
Oh, 100%.
That's just my opinion on that's a whole different subject. But in my opinion, her losing in mixed martial arts means absolutely nothing to her coming to professional wrestling. Brock Lesnar come in after a loss too.
Yes. Oh, we came in off a string of losses, I believe.
2, Cain Velasquez.
Cain Velasquez and yes, exactly. But again, and we'll use Brock as an example because I think in terms of the way they've brought Ronda in, I think you would agree with me that she's been brought in comparable to how they built Brock when he came back from the UFC.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree with that? Yeah. So
100%.
But
do you think it's the difference? Like, this is, again, separating the two. The difference of Ronda is a world-class mixed martial artist. Now she's coming into professional wrestling. If you're looking at it strictly from a storyline point of view, she has 0 professional wrestling experience.
Whereas Brock
Stephanie is a former women's champion, storyline-wise, right? Like she has competed in professional wrestling matches before. In mixed martial arts, no one's going to grab Ronda's hair. No one's going to body slam her. No one's throwing her into the cage and making her bounce off the ropes or things like that. So from a storyline perspective, Stephanie did have has more experience than Ronda does. So in a professional wrestling match, maybe Stephanie could get the upper hand a little bit.
Now, see, I like this because you're sort of counseling through my issues at the match here.
I'm honestly not trying to argue with you. I'm trying to play devil's advocate, right? Because we see it completely different, and I enjoy like the difference of conversation. Because I'm not saying I'm right either. I could be 100% wrong. It's just how I see it, right?
Yeah, no. Well, and of course, you have much more experience working in wrestling than I do. So you're going to have a totally different opinion than I would because I come from it. I have a limited knowledge of behind the scenes, but mostly I watch through the lens of as a fan.
But you're a lifelong wrestling fan, right? And that's who you're portraying to. That's who it goes out to.
Right.
But so I
would say, I guess the thing for me is they've openly acknowledged that Stephanie cannot hang in the ring with a wrestler, right? So yes, you're right. Ronda's not a wrestler. She's a fighter who is now trying to become a wrestler. But for me, I would have appreciated if there was maybe a few more breakups or a few less attempts, and maybe you just grab the arm, but you don't have Stephanie do the hand lock defense of the armbar. You could still tease it, I think, in a way where the fans would get what we're going for without having Stephanie openly defend the armbar. Now, if Ronda went in there with, say, an Asuka or a Charlotte or even an Alexa Bliss, I agree. I wouldn't want Ronda to run through them, which is something I'm afraid they're going to do when she gets to singles competition. But that's another story which we could talk about at a later date. If it was one of those women who are wrestlers and have legit pro wrestling credentials, I'd be totally okay with the defense of the armbar because of the things you mentioned. But where I sort of draw the line is that Stephanie, in the canon of WWE, has been acknowledged as not having those wrestling skills. So therefore, it just disconnected for me.
And that's fair, but go back to what you said about defending the armbar. What did you mean about grabbing the arm? I've done jiu-jitsu. I've trained mixed martial arts. I just want to know what you meant.
Yeah. So there was a few moments where I believe it was maybe 2 of the 5 attempts that I counted anyway, where Stephanie was sort of clasping the hands. You know, you'll see. You would know in UFC, you know, if someone's trying to pull down the arm to lock in the armbar, you'll see them either, you know, grabbing the hands.
That's 100% the defense. Like as soon as that arm is let's go, you're toast.
Oh, well, yeah, we've seen it. If you watch UFC, you've seen it hundreds of times. So there was a couple times where Stephanie was doing that, and I don't know if there would have been a way where you could have done it, but I think as a fan, I would have appreciated a couple more, a few less of the defending, the legitimate defending, and maybe more of just Ronda goes to grab the arm and Stephanie's able to worm her way out. Okay. She sort of slips out, you know.
Before she ever grabs it.
Yes, okay. Exactly. Okay. So if you do a few less of Stephanie doing the legitimate, BJJ defense of the armbar, and a few more of, maybe we're standing up and Ronda goes to grab the arm and Stephanie goes through the ropes or something like that, because it was a mixed tag. There was rope breaks. That's fair, yeah. So something like that, I think you could have still got the same point across to the fans, and I think the pop would have been just as huge when she locks it in, because I also don't think the pop was so much due to the armbar. I think it's seeing Stephanie get her comeuppance is a large part of that pop, because we don't see it very often, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time we saw Stephanie get physical was last year's Wrestlemania, where she went through the table.
Yeah,
I
think so. Yeah,
which also got a huge pop. So I don't know if the pop was entirely due to that armbar spot, as it was to just seeing Stephanie get beaten after so many years of deriding the fan favorites.
Well, and it also could be a lot of people thought Ronda was going to fail, and then she went out there and crushed it.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, so that could be a lot of people actually happy being able to get to see what they wanted to see with her too, right?
Yep. Yeah, I don't have any issue with how Ronda performed. My issue is just with some of the steps of how that match was laid out in terms of how Stephanie did. The stuff with Triple H I absolutely loved. Oh my goodness. She's the moment where she's backing him into the corner and he's doing the arm flails. Yeah. That was tremendous. Yeah. I loved that part.
And it's believable too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
She is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a credit to Triple H that he had no qualms with doing that as well. We hear all the backstage stories of Triple H, being less than kind in terms of how he wants to do some matches. But I think from what we've seen over the past few years with Triple H, those rumors to me seem pretty baseless.
Yeah, I've known people that have worked with him over the years, and I know people now that specifically work with him every day. And they would not say the exact opposite about him.
I
people
believe
that
it.
leave WWE sometimes leave with sour grapes. And who are you going to be? Got to blame somebody, right?
And that's what I mean.
You're not going to blame yourself. You're going to blame the guy that's on top, right?
Yeah.
And again, I've met him once. I've had zero dealings with him, like in wrestling whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But from everyone that's ever told me that's actually worked with him, he's so easy to get along with. He's always willing to do business, and like in the ring, like they have zero issues with him. You have all these top level indie guys that come in that probably buried him on the indie scene, but you have like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and AJ Styles all doing the two sweet with him in the ring. You know what I mean? Yeah, clearly, absolutely. He's either changed from way back into the day to who he is now, or is just people that not everybody gets along with everybody. Yeah. Those people that left had problems with him. Even Del Rio. recently gave an interview where he apologized to Triple H about how he acted while he was there. He realizes that like it wasn't Hunter, it was him being in a bad place in his life at the time. You know, and so it's a lot of stuff like that. In my opinion, like I think he's been my favorite guy to watch since like '97.
So I'm a huge Triple H fan too.
Really biased, but
yeah. I'm a huge Triple H fan, so that's what I mean. Where I say they seem pretty baseless to me because I think for Triple H to Ronda's a big star, so there might be some of that.
Yeah.
You know, you just got her, so you need to make her look good.
Yeah.
But I think for it to be Triple H in particular, who is doing the arm flails and looking ridiculous at the expense of himself, I think goes a long way to assuage some of the fans' complaints. And when I see them now, a few years ago, I remember after the Sting match, there was particular vitriol amongst the internet for Triple H.
Be there the next day.
Well, exactly, right. That's the thing. You need to keep Triple H strong because he's going to be at WrestleMania, probably going to be at SummerSlam, maybe in a match or two throughout the year. So there's larger reasons than that. You can't have him lose every single year.
Honestly, how much does he win? Like
not much. I think
he puts everybody over. He wins with the intention of putting someone over. Everyone is like, "Oh, he won the title at the Royal Rumble that year. He won the title at the Royal Rumble to put Roman Reigns over in front of 101,000 people because everybody else in the roster was injured." So
same with Survivor Series this year.
Yeah.
If you remember the end of Survivor Series, Braun backing him down and hitting him with the power slam.
Yeah.
So like you said, it is targeted wins over the last few years where he's not just beating people just to beat people. He's beating people with the intention of we're going to use that win down the road for a particular reason.
And in my opinion, where all the bad stuff comes from was like years ago, like around the 2000 to 2004 or whatever.
The Booker T and RVD, stuff like that.
He was the best, though. He was better than those guys. In my opinion, like I would have much rather seen Triple H on top than anybody else at that time. Like the stuff with DX, the stuff with Stephanie, the stuff with Chyna was my favorite stuff to watch. And I wasn't in professional wrestling at that time. I knew absolutely nothing. Not that I know anything now. But I enjoyed watching Hunter because he was my favorite guy to watch. Like I read on the internet, like, oh, he's burying people. Maybe, but he's better than those guys.
Now, what about it in the sort of 03, 04, 02, 03, 04 range? Do you think he would have been a better choice on top than Booker T? Because that is the one. We're going to go a little off topic here, but I feel that WrestleMania 19 match. I personally think Booker T would have been a good choice, and then you could have put it back on Triple H later. That's just me as a fan.
I've honestly never been a fan of Booker T. I'm not saying he's bad, but I just
doesn't work for you.
Amazing. Everybody has wrestlers that they like and don't like. That doesn't mean that the wrestlers they don't like are bad. I've never really liked Booker T. I liked him when he came back and did the thing with Cody Rhodes there a few years ago. But overall, at WCW Booker T, WWE Booker T, I was never really a fan. I can't tell you why. It's funny. I was never a fan of Eddie Guerrero in ECW or in WCW. When he came to WWE, he became one of my favorite guys to watch of all time. And now I go back and watch his WCW stuff, and I'm like, what the heck was wrong with me? I'm like, this guy was amazing from day one.
But you have that context of years later. You have the context of years later.
But even when he came to WWE in, when was that? 2000? 2000. When he came to 2000, and he started wrestling, I'm like, instantly, I'm like, holy crap, this guy's good. I'm like, but I didn't like this guy like a year ago. Then I went back and watched his early WCW stuff, and I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, I was ridiculous. Like, I don't know if I was appreciating his character more or I was just seeing him because I was always a WWF guy. Never anything else. I never strayed. I watched WCW, but I was always a WWF guy. So maybe I was like, well, I can't like that guy because he's WCW. I don't know what it was.
Plays for the other team.
There's a lot of guys like that. Like I go back and watch now. I'm like, that guy was fantastic. I remember watching ECW in the mid to late 90s.
Okay.
Thinking it was absolutely incredible. It was fantastic. You go back and watch it now. There's some things,
it sucks.
but it's barely watchable. Like,
yeah,
but
a lot of
like,
it.
I never missed it. Like, it was fantastic. Like, there's still some things I go back and watch. Like, Raven's one of my all-time favorite characters. Tommy Dreamer is one of my all-time favorite. Like, anything. Love Van Damme. But man, most of it is like unwatchable. But if you're comparing it to stuff now, right? At that time, it was the Nirvana, the grunge, the dirty, like
mind-blowing
hardcore wrestling, right?
I think that's an interesting point where, particularly about this Ronda match, maybe in a few years after we get the context of some of her career in WWE, I'll look back at this match and go, you know what, I don't know what I was worried about with her, with Stephanie defending the armbar and her looking somewhat weak in her submission attempts. Maybe down the road I'll think, wow, what a goof I was. But I think in the moment, today on April 9th, 2018, it just didn't work for me, and I would have liked a little less of the.
To your point, to make your case stronger, Charlotte made Asuka tap with the figure 8 very quickly. And was that the first time she hooked it in that match too? Yep. Yeah, I believe so. And with one arm for the bridge. Yeah. So to your point, that makes your point even stronger. Stephanie, not a wrestler. Asuka taps instantly the first time she's put in the move, right? Yep.
It's now that Charlotte Asuka match, it was my match of the night.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
And I think they were very careful, if I'm not mistaken. Asuka never locked in the crossface chicken wing.
Yeah, no.
So
the Asuka lock. Come on now.
The Asuka lock. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm a Bob Backlund fan.
Yeah,
I know. So I think that'll play in down the road, where we might see Asuka rectify that loss. Whereas with this Stephanie Ronda match, like I don't see Ronda ever stepping back in the ring and just steamrolling Stephanie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Like this was the match. This was the match we got, and it's probably the only match we're going to get between the two. So for Stephanie to be able to hang, I think you could have crafted the match in a way where, to use an inside baseball term, Stephanie got her heat, but Ronda still looked really, really strong, instead of Stephanie being able to compete with Ronda, at least for a few minutes.
Just say inside baseball term?
Yeah.
I don't watch baseball. That's an inside wrestling term, too. How does that pertain to baseball?
It is. No, it has nothing to do with baseball.
Oh.
Nothing to do with baseball. Oh. No. It's wrestling. Okay. Inside baseball is just the thing. It's the kind of the term you say when you're using something inside.
Oh, I've never heard that before. I've learned something.
Well, now you can incorporate it into
absolutely stealing that from you.
Absolutely.
So, Charlotte Asuka was your match of the night?
It was. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
How come?
That's just the style I like. When I go back to watch, like to your point, I don't go back to watch ECW. When I go back to watch classic wrestling, I watch early 80s WCW every time. That style where it's athletic, it's logical to me. You're doing it's more of the
early 80s or early 90s.
Usually like early mid 80s. Okay. The sort of Flair, Dusty, Horseman stuff. Oh. That's the stuff I really like.
Okay.
The network has a bunch of the old 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock WCW Saturday nights.
Yeah.
So I love watching those. It's more of the sport of professional wrestling, which is what I gravitate more towards. I love the entertainment aspect and the spectacle. I'm a big Lucha Underground fan, and that's totally ridiculous. People get killed on Lucha Underground. But in terms of major North American wrestling, I like it more as a sport, which is what that match was. You had Charlotte and Asuka trading submissions. They had some big high spots, but it was all logical to me. It wasn't spots for spots' sake, like some of the matches on the card that were later on, I felt had. It was just very logical, very athletic. So that was definitely my match of the night for those reasons.
Was that the first time she did a Spanish Fly, Charlotte?
I want to say she did it at WrestleMania 32 in that triple threat.
Did she? I couldn't remember. I was watching
wrong.
It last night. I couldn't remember if she'd ever done it before.
No, I may be wrong, but I believe that was the second time, I think.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember. I don't remember her ever doing it. Doesn't mean she didn't. But
she may not have.
I
I might be wrong.
I couldn't place it, but I thought that was pretty. I thought that was pretty crazy. I loved that match as well. I think Charlotte's arm got busted open in that match too, her elbow
she
or something.
There was a lot of people getting busted up on the whole card.
Yeah.
Like AJ's ear was bleeding in the match. Of course, the stuff with Roman, whether or not that was unintentional or not, I don't know. But
no, and he did the exact same thing to Randy Orton at SummerSlam in 2016. I was live for that show. Brock is not going to intentionally bust someone open in the ring, right?
Accidentally on purpose.
To believe that, which everybody does, so it worked. But he's not going to take off his gloves and elbow someone in the face. Are you kidding me?
We might not be seeing Roman Reigns tonight if he actually tried to do that. Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
What are your thoughts on that match, the main event?
On the Roman Brock?
Yeah.
For the most part, I wasn't a fan.
I don't think anybody was a fan.
No, I know Marcus Burke was a fan.
Well, I 100% get it too. Like I get it, and by saying, I mean anyone is a fan. I mean anybody watching it. I love with how they book Brock Lesnar. Nobody should, if it was real, nobody would last 10 seconds in there.
Which again goes back to my point with Ronda.
Yeah. But I love how he doesn't go in there and he throws suplexes. Right? He's not going in there doing mixed martial arts. He's throwing professional wrestling suplexes and a ton of them. Should Roman have taken like 5 or 6 finishers? Probably not. But
that's my issue.
They're building him up to be like, what does it take to build this guy? Is he undefeated at WrestleMania?
No, he lost to Rollins.
He lost
in the triple threat at 31.
Okay, yeah.
Which was the Brock match.
He was the guy that got pinned in that too, right? Yeah,
he was. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that match?
So there's sort of 2 Brock matches I find, 2 types.
Yeah.
There's the one where he seems really motivated and it's fast-paced, intense, and they just sort of let Brock go. So I'm thinking of the Samoa Joe match, the Goldberg match from last year's WrestleMania. And then there's the slow plodding, we need you to go 20 minutes in the main event Brock matches, which are the exact same as the fast-paced, intense Brock matches, but spread out over 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what last night's match was. It was suplex, finisher, but spread over 20 minutes with a lot of downtime in between. It just sort of started to really get long for me. I was starting to hit my WrestleMania wall, which happens every year around the last match. Now that we've had 7 hours of WrestleMania, I liked the story they were telling. You built Brock up since 2016 as if he hits one F5, the match is over.
Yeah. He's only lost once since he beat, or twice, I guess, if you count the triple threat. But he's only been pinned once since he won the titles in 2014.
Yeah.
When he beat Cena, the only other time he's been pinned was against Goldberg, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? I used to be so good at wrestling knowledge and trivia, but as I get older, it's not all there anymore. So that's 4 years only getting pinned once.
Yeah.
And again, that was a pin for a bigger thing.
Yeah. I mean the booking of Brock I've loved over the last, really since that Cena match at the SummerSlam in 2014.
I was there live for that too.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah.
No kidding. Wow. How was that?
It was awesome.
How did that play in the crowd?
It was great. I mean, Brock was on fire then, right? That was the first time he came out and never really did Suplex City. He's suplexed Cena like 16 times or something. It was crazy,
Yeah. I wasn't much of a fan of the 5 F5s.
Yeah.
I find a lot of these WrestleMania main events really, to my mind, dating back to like the Cena Rock main events. It's a lot of finishers. And then a lot of the commentary saying, what does it take to beat this guy?
Yeah. The first time I ever remember seeing that was WrestleMania 19 with Austin and Rock.
Austin Rock.
It took 3 stunners or 3 rock bottoms or whatever.
Yeah. Now, for that one, though, that one I can give a bit of a pass because it was the end of a very long feud.
Yeah.
That was 19 was 03, and WrestleMania 15 was 99. So that's 4 years, 5 years. So for that I can give a little bit of a pass. But I'm just not much of a fan of multiple finishers, multiple kickouts, and then when we watch what's the next pay-per-view, Extreme Rules, and Roman hits a spear or Brock hits one F5 and the match is over, that then I just sort of think, okay.
Do you think they were protecting Roman because he beat the Undertaker last year? It still has to look super.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think not only that, I think they're protecting Roman because that's very clearly who they view as their next top guy. As we see Cena start to take a decreased role. I mean, for half this show, he was in the stands.
That had to really suck for him.
I love that. I love drunk John Cena watching cruiserweight matches.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Give me that every week.
Yeah.
But as we see John Cena start to take a decreased role, we're seeing Roman step up more and more and more. And I like Roman as a wrestler. I like a lot of his matches.
Me too.
But I'm just not a fan of the multiple kickouts. I think they were protecting him partially because he beat The Undertaker, but I also think they're protecting him just because they want him to be strong. I mean, there's the old joke from the CM Punk podcast, you got to make Roman look strong. And I think that's still something that we're seeing.
Yeah. Were you surprised that Brock Lesnar won? Because there was 99.99% of the world thought he's leaving, and maybe he still is leaving. I have a thing. Well, I wrote it yesterday on Facebook and made a video about it yesterday. I didn't think it was actually going to happen. It was like, what if Brock Lesnar wins and shocks the world? What if he goes to UFC as WWE champion? As I'm writing this, it's just like to get people to interact, right? I 100% thought that Roman Reigns was going to win.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think everybody did.
Do you think he signed another contract? Do you think he has a deal where he's going to go to UFC and try to be UFC and WWE champion at the same time? Or was it all a ruse like it was a couple of years ago when they did the exact same thing? Dana White is a huge WWE fan.
Of course.
His business model for UFC before WME bought it, he'll tell you, was completely based off of WWE. He talks about meetings, how he went to Stanford and met with Vince and was like, why do you do this? Why do you do that? His business model is 100% WWE. He's a WWE fan. Why not take a picture with Brock in Vegas the day Brock's in Vegas and not going to show up at the pay-per-view? Like, just to like have some fun, you know what I mean? Like, Dana loves Vince. He talks about him all the time. I mean, so do you think like it was just a giant ruse, or do you think he's going to do both? Like, what do you think?
I'm inclined to believe that there will be another Brock UFC fight at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
I think partially it was a ruse. I think there definitely was. They definitely dramatized Brock leaving. When they absolutely, it worked. It worked on me.
Yeah.
When they bring it, see, as WWE fans, we're conditioned to think that they only show us what they want to show us. And so when Roman calls out on TV that Brock is not here and he's going to leave, and then you do the deal backstage where Vince is like, oh, you can't say that, you're suspended. Maybe that should have tipped us off a little bit.
I don't even mean WWE storyline wise. I mean everybody else outside of it, like all the mixed martial arts websites, ESPN, TMZ, Dana White giving interviews, Paul Heyman talking about it in the New York Post.
I don't think all the publications were in on it per se. I think they got worked.
100%.
Yeah, I think they got worked
100%. Yeah, because Dana White was the guy feeding the story. Why is Dana? Dana doesn't have anything to do with WWE. Why he's Brock fought for him a year ago. Like, why does he have to lie about?
Yeah. I would figure that another deal got cut just because I don't think WWE would let him leave with the belt.
Yeah, not at all.
If he didn't have a contract.
Yeah.
But I do think he'll probably split time with UFC. I would imagine. So if he re-enters the USADA testing, correct me if I'm wrong, he would have 4 months to wait?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'd be looking at like a summertime fight.
July, their biggest show.
The big show.
Who's to say he didn't already enter? He looks way different than he did 6 months ago, right? So he's obviously come off whatever he was on and going to go back into USADA. Who's to say he's not already in it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like they have to announce Brock Lesnar enters the pool, right?
No, like I'm sure if Dana White goes to USADA and says,
together, like they can just be like, "Hey, don't say Brock Lesnar's back in the pool."
That's what I was just going to say. I'm sure if Dana White goes to USADA and says, I've got a few Benjamins that says you don't say Brock is in the testing pool. I'm sure that happens, right?
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't have to be announced.
No,
so
they didn't announce George St. Pierre was in it for. George St. Pierre was in it for like a year before he came.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. So I figure we'll see Brock. I wouldn't be surprised if he faces the winner of DC and Stipe.
Yeah, me too. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has at least one fight before that. It would even on that card, because that's the July card. Brock Lesnar can fight. I mean, it's a risk. Anytime you step into the octagon, it's a risk. But give him somebody. He's like a Mark Hunt, who is just 100% a striker that Brock Lesnar can take down. If everyone wants to see him versus Ngannou. If Brock Lesnar can stay away from Ngannou for 45 seconds, he'll win that fight super, super easy.
Yeah.
He just has to stay away from that opening round of every or that opening minute of every round. Then shoot in and take Ngannou down.
Yep.
He did it for Mark Hunt, and Mark Hunt's a K1 kickboxing champion. A million times better striker than Ngannou. So if he can stay away from Hunt, he should, in theory, be able to stay away from Hunt. He should be able to stay away from Francis. And then the main event of that show is Stipe and DC. Yeah. You could have, if Brock Lesnar wins, you could have Brock Lesnar come into the cage, challenge the winner. And think of this. DC is a huge professional wrestling fan.
Yes, he is.
Stipe is an amazing heavyweight, and I think he'll probably win. But let's just think if DC could easily just go out there and win.
He fought at heavyweight in Strikeforce. He was a Strikeforce champion.
Strikeforce Grand Prix champion. His first couple fights in the UFC were at heavyweight. He beat Frank Mir. He beat somebody else.
He only dropped down so he wouldn't have to fight
Cain Velasquez. But imagine the hype DC could create with a professional wrestler. He is a huge fan. I think it would be incredible.
Yeah. It's exciting times. I mean, Dana, they were very careful to show Dana after the Ronda match.
For like 2 seconds.
but if you noticed, he was also in the highlights at the end.
Oh, was he?
He was. Yeah, they showed that. They showed the clip of him clapping and whatnot. So it's exciting times. We've got Ronda, we've got Brock. So there's definitely some commingling between UFC and WWE. So who knows what we could see, and that's what's exciting, right? That's what's exciting as a fan. I'm a fan of both. Of course, I'm a wrestling fan first, but I'm a huge MMA fan as well. So I doubt we'll ever see a Conor McGregor or anything like that. At least not right now. But the thought of what we could see is what makes it exciting. It's the speculation.
Did you see the interview Dana gave? It was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Somebody asked him if Conor McGregor wanted to show up at WrestleMania, if he would let him, and he said yes.
There you go. There you go. There you go. I don't think Conor's going to be going to NXT anytime soon. Just exactly,
right? Like,
exactly.
He's like 3 feet tall. He was. He's lucky.
I mean, he'd be a great cruiserweight. He'd be a great cruiserweight. 205 Live would see a spike in viewership if Conor McGregor started wrestling there. But just the idea of like what we could see really excites me. And I also on the flip side of that, what WWE wrestlers potentially down the road could go to UFC and start an MMA career. Like we've seen Batista do it, we've seen Bobby Lashley do it, of course Brock. So it's just the potential.
Just signed with Bellator.
Yeah, that's right. He did, didn't he?
Yeah.
So just the thought of that really excites me.
What other matches at WrestleMania did you enjoy? Like overall, like more than other ones. I thought the whole show was fantastic. But
I did too. I thought it was a good WrestleMania, very strong. I liked AJ Nakamura.
Yeah.
That was the match, though, that I found got a little high spot's sake towards the end.
Go Japan.
Yeah.
they wanted to put on the New Japan match, right?
That's right. And I just find the New Japan matches, they have that certain charm that the WWE can't grasp.
Yeah.
You can technically do the moves.
Different audience.
Yes. You can go through the motions of what a New Japan-esque match would be.
Yep.
And they did that. But it sort of gets, pardon the pun, lost in translation when you go from Japan to the WWE.
Yep.
I don't think the commentary really knows how to play to a match of that type. I think it's a big problem and something that in my experience, my limited experience with commentating wrestling matches, it gets very easy to just go, oh, at every big move.
Yeah.
And I find that's a big problem with the WWE commentary, is that a lot of times it's just, oh, and then someone else hits a big move and, oh, my, and continuous, which they did. And I mean, for all I know, the Japanese commentators might be saying the same thing too, but in Japanese, it sounds a lot better than in English. And like you said, I don't think the audience for WWE totally knows how to respond to a match like that.
Because as big of a voice as we think the internet audience has, in WWE world, it's like this big. Yeah. Like I've gone to shows all over the United States. The internet voice is literally this small. Like, we just are immersed in it, so it's all we see, right?
Exactly.
But they have no idea what New Japan Pro Wrestling is. Like,
I mean,
for the most part.
The perfect example is if you live in the Halifax area or St. John. I believe that's where the other WWE show is going to be, right? Harbor Station.
Yeah.
So if you live there, go to your local, and I'm talking to you, the audience watching this, go to your local indie show, talk to some fans there, then go to the WWE live event, talk to some fans there who's sitting by you. You're going to see the difference.
Oh, yeah.
The indie fans are the guys on the internet, the guys who watch everything. The WWE fans, for the most part, are moms and dads and their kids who thought, oh, my son watches this on TV. I'm going to take him to this show.
Yep.
You know, WrestleMania is a little different, I think, in that you do get a lot more internet fans because they travel. I don't think your average mom and dad and their child from London is going to come all the way over to New Orleans for WrestleMania, whereas the hardcore fans, I think, will. But like you said, there's still a massive amount of people who don't know or don't really care what New Japan is. They watch WWE, and that's what they watch. And to them, you know, I hate to say it, Nakamura is probably not that big of a star either. Yeah. To WWE, as much as I would have liked AJ and Nakamura to go last, because I'm a much bigger fan of them than I am Roman. Brock, I'm a huge fan of, but the right main event was Roman Brock.
100%. The internet craps on Roman Reigns. You go to any show anywhere. Tell me whose T-shirt you see the most in the crowd. It's the I've seen mothers leave their kids behind to go touch Roman Reigns.
Of course.
Who buys the T-shirt? It ain't the 6-year-old.
No,
it's the mother. Right?
That's right.
He is so crazily over everywhere except your television audience, because it's the cool thing to do is to boo him. Right? Just like John Cena. You go to any show anywhere, you're like, because when I first started going to I've always gone to WWE shows, but over the last 10 years, I've gone to an extraordinary amount of WWE shows.
I love seeing the pictures when you go to all these places. It's fantastic.
But, I'm sitting there when I first started doing it. I'm like, oh, wow, they're not booing John Cena here in, like, Bridgeport, Connecticut house show. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, the place is going bananas for John Cena. I'm like, well, this is different. And then I started seeing, like, oh, they're not booing him here either, or here either, or here either, or here either. It's just the television audience that boos him because it's a cool thing to do, right? Because they go to the bigger city.
That's right. But yeah, I like that AJ Nakamura match. And also, actually, before I forget, John Cena's not turning heel, everybody. He's not going to turn heel. And Roman is probably not going to turn heel. So if you're one of those people watching who are talking on the internet saying that or speculating that they're going to turn heel, they're not going to, because to your point, they don't need to. You get the dual reaction already
John Cena
on
way too
TV.
much with Make-A-Wish to turn him against children.
And I bet Roman probably does a lot too now.
He does.
So,
I read a story the other day. He was scheduled to spend 30 minutes with a Make-A-Wish kid, and he was there with him for over 3 hours. Like, that's amazing to me. To me, that's what it's all about. You can't boo that guy. Like, it's for the kids. Those kids are getting to see their heroes, and that's what it is to me. I could care less about your 18 to 34-year-old male demographic.
That's right.
Like,
well, guess what?
It's your kids.
That's right. Who your 18 to 34 male demographic, they're going to age out. You need to keep, like, from a business standpoint, you need to keep hooking the children, because the children are going to introduce it to their children, and they're going to get hooked, and so on. It's the same thing we're seeing now with Star Wars. People, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm pretty keyed in on the Star Wars internet. And we're seeing the same thing. Oh, New Scott, come on!
I can't say anything bad about it. I've never actually watched a Star Wars movie. I just and I don't have anything against it. It's just my thing. Like people will like, oh, you like pro wrestling? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what's your favorite movie? Star Wars? You know what? That's fake too. Go find it's just a joke.
It is. It is. Like, no, but what I was going to say is we're seeing the same thing in that a lot of the 18 to 34 male demographic is getting mad that the newer films are not what they envisioned, and they're basically complaining about the booking because it's marketed more towards children, and that's what you need to be a successful business. That's why McDonald's has a play place, for crying out loud, and a Happy Meal. You engender the children so you can continue the cycle, and as you said. I don't think there should be a problem with having one guy who never turns heel. In my opinion, it's healthy to have that one person who the kids can always look to as their hero. And then the story, much like we saw with John Cena, to varying degrees of success, the story can be, will he overcome this obstacle? And then when he does, then you get that's why we like superheroes. If we're going to look at it from a sort of societal aspect, we don't read Superman because we want to see Superman turn heel.
Right.
We read Superman because he's that pillar of hope, much like John Cena is for children.
100%.
Much like Roman is going to be for the next generation of children.
Yeah, and people always go back, well, they turned Hulk Hogan heel. They turned Hulk Hogan heel because Hulk Hogan stopped drawing in WCW. Their audience was gone way down. John Cena is, if anything, drawing more.
That's right. That's right. And also Hulk Hogan, WCW and WWE had different audiences. There was crossover, but they had different audiences. To a lot of WCW fans, I don't think Hulk Hogan was ever that shining hero.
No.
That a John Cena was. Yeah. So it didn't have the same impact when you turn him heel. Now, someone like a Sting would be, I think, much more akin to a Hulk Hogan for WCW.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they did turn Sting heel briefly.
A little bit. Various, he joined the NWO, but it got a pop. He did turn heel for a little while, but it didn't really work. The fans just didn't want to boo him, right? Like,
and I mean, you could say, Cena's had a few feuds over the years where he went heel-ish.
Yeah. But that was only for a couple of promos here and there, right?
Right, exactly. And much like Sting, it was brief, right? It was brief. So Hulk Hogan, when you turn Hulk Hogan heel in WCW, that's very different than turning him heel at his peak in WWE.
Yeah.
Which they didn't do, right?
Right. Because he was still drawing and making money. You only have to change something if it breaks, right?
That's right.
John Cena's on top for 15 years, 16 years.
Yeah, well, 2005. So
why, if he's still working and still drawing, why risk it? Maybe it'll like completely crash everything and it won't get over as much as everyone thinks it will. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
He has to be PG now. He can't cut those John Cena raps that he used to cut. The stuff he did with The Rock was like a one-time thing because it was The Rock, but he can't come out every week and be basic thugonomics John Cena, right?
No, exactly. Well, I've heard in interviews from John Cena that in that Rock feud that they were talking about turning him heel, and he wasn't going to be the doctor of thugonomics. He had like a singlet or trunks made. So he was going to be a more serious wrestler was the idea, which I think would have been interesting to see. It's one of those lost things. But anyway, back to AJ Nakamura. I'm interested. Did you see the turn coming at the end?
Not as soon as he took the belt, I did. Not until that point. No, I thought they were going to embrace and hug, and then they'd have another match next month or whatever. As soon as he took the belt, I'm like, he's going to hit him with it. And then as soon as he took the knee, I'm like, oh, he's going to low blow here for sure. Yeah. There's no way Nakamura is bowing to AJ, unless it's his last match. There's no way he's bowing to AJ Styles here. Yeah. And I'm surprised Asuka didn't do something similar too. I thought that's where that was going first. Then you can make Team Japan.
Bring back Funaki and Tajiri while they're at it. I think the reason they had Asuka do that was to subvert our expectations for the Nakamura turn.
Agreed.
Because, I hate to say it, they're both Japanese.
Yeah.
We think, the average fan might think, that's just the way they do things.
They're nice people.
When they lose a big match, as a sign of respect, they congratulate the winner.
Yeah.
And so having Asuka do that, also for a SmackDown title, and then having Nakamura do that, also for a SmackDown title, against a white Southern person, interestingly enough.
Gainesville, Georgia.
You subvert the expectations that you think, Nakamura's just doing what Asuka did. He's congratulating her.
Yeah.
And then the low blow is even more impactful to people who don't get it.
Yeah, no, it's 100%. They definitely set that seed in earlier that, look, they're respectful. They're going to shake hands. They're Japanese. They have, this nice culture. And then, boom, the low blow. And everyone was like, what the?
I think Nakamura is going to be a top heel.
Oh, 100%.
I think...
He doesn't need to cut promos anymore.
Exactly. I think he's going to win the title very soon as a heel. And I think we'll probably see him carry SmackDown for the rest of the year on top.
Do you think Brock Lesnar is going to break CM Punk's record?
Okay, so we're at 372 as of today.
Mm-hmm. He was 434. Is that right?
Punk was 430. That sounds about right. 430 something anyway.
Yeah.
No, you're right. 434.
Yeah.
So that would take us until...
How many more days is that? 70? 60?
Yeah, that's so we'd be looking at about May, June.
Yeah, Brock is usually gone until June, July.
I think he will. I think part of that's probably that they just don't want Punk to have that record anymore. So let's might as well do. I don't think that he started out. They probably didn't start out that way last year. I'm sure they didn't think, we're gonna have Brock break the record. And I'm pretty sure.
I don't think they planned it with Punk either. It's all.
I don't think they. No, I very much don't think they did. I think once they got to Raw 100. That's when they knew. I think when they had the Rock, when he had him GTS the Rock.
Yeah.
I think that's probably when they decided around then. I don't think they even decided for Brock to keep it this long until they knew he was coming back.
Yeah.
I would fully expect that they were all set to give it to Roman until they decided Brock's coming back.
I agree, and it's a great way to shock everybody, right? You can't surprise wrestling fans anymore. It's it's hard to do. Everyone automatically assumes, okay, Roman's winning, Asuka's winning, Nakamura's winning, Ronda's winning, which did happen, but they shocked the crowd with Charlotte. They shocked the crowd with AJ. They shocked the crowd with Brock. That's so hard to do now.
Yep. And that's part of why I like this WrestleMania a lot.
Yeah.
Is because it subverted your expectations. WrestleMania is probably the most predictable show of the year for a lot of people. And I think it was good that they shocked people, especially with Brock. Do I think he'll break the record? Yeah, I do. And I really like the idea of him holding both belts, UFC and WWE. If they can pull that off, if he can win enough fights, I would imagine they're probably going to give him that tune-up and then the title fight.
He only needs to have one because he's going to bring pay-per-views no matter what, right?
Absolutely. It would not shock me.
They gave him his first title fight after two.
It would not shock
two UFC fights.
2 UFC fights, one was a loss.
Yeah.
So
he went in with 1 win. That's right.
yeah. Yeah.
But they saw those pay-per-view numbers and were like, ha, you're fighting for the title. People forget it's a business. Like,
and especially now
in
in
combat
this new
real
era.
sport is 100% a business. If you or me went to the UFC and our first fight sold 2 million pay-per-view buys, we'd be getting a fight, or a championship fight in our next fight. It'd be ridiculous not to. But if you're on the reason why Michael Bisping took 10 years to get a title fight is, I mean, I love Michael Bisping, but nobody wants to see him fight. Like, nobody buys pay-per-views to see him fight.
No, that's right.
And it's a shame, right? He deserved it so many years ago, right? Anderson Silva got his title fight after one fight because he was on Fight Night Live back when they were doing them in, like, hotel lobbies.
The Hard Rock and whatnot.
Went through the roof, and they were like, well, let's give this guy a
Same with GSP last year. He comes back and immediately gets a title fight in a division that he wasn't even fighting in.
And he goes in. If anybody thought GSP was actually going to compete at 185, are crazy. Those guys, it was the right fight at the right time.
Exactly.
It's not because GSP isn't good enough. Those guys are huge. Was he going to fight Yoel Romero? Like, run away, George. He's 3 times bigger than you. I don't care how good you are. Yoel Romero is a Cuban Olympian. Like, you are not going to beat Yoel Romero. Luke Rockhold, maybe you're as good of a fighter as Rockhold. Rockhold looks like a heavyweight. Like, there's a certain point, the people say mixed martial arts size doesn't matter. There's a certain point when there's 2 guys that are equally skilled, the bigger guy is going to win. Because absolutely. Conor McGregor hits like a truck. He's not going to knock out Stipe Miocic. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the size matters when you have skillful fighters. If you have a skillful Hoist Gracie could tap out some random Joe that weighs 600 pounds, like, no problem at all. But that 600-pound guy, if he's a black belt jiu-jitsu, Hoist is going to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's the GSP is an interesting example of that because for the reasons you mentioned. Could you imagine him versus like a Robert Whittaker or something like that? You always have to size up the fight. Like, they don't fight at their normal weight. They cut. If you look at someone like a Brock. Like, I would not be surprised if Brock has to cut down to meet the upper limit of the heavyweight class.
He cuts from 290 pounds down to 265.
So there you go, right? So
at the time he was competing, there was only 2 heavyweights that cut to 265. Him and Shane, I think it was Shane Carwin was the other guy. But he was the only heavyweight cutting down on a regular basis to 265. Like GSP doesn't fight. Did too before he came off, before he stopped eating horse meat. And now he weighs only 250, but he cut too. Like, Brock is a freak of nature. He's that big, and he moves like a cruiserweight. Like, it's
well, I mean, look at Conor McGregor recently is a great example. He's fought. He came up in UFC at featherweight 145, and then we saw him a couple years later fight Nate Diaz at 170. And he put on weight. I'm sure he didn't put on that much weight. It's probably not that far off from his normal walk-around weight.
I don't think he probably put on anything because if I remember correctly, he weighed in at 168 pounds for that fight. Somewhere
that might be.
So that's probably what he walks around at. When Dan Henderson competed at 205, Dan Henderson walked around at 199 and he fought at 199. Like, that's why when he cut the 185, he did really well because he was a bigger guy at that weight class.
Same with GSP. GSP walks around at around 185 for which is what he fought at middleweight. The reason why he was so dominant at welterweight is because, for the reasons you mentioned, he's a great wrestler. And when you're a great wrestler and you have some size over your opponents, it makes it all the easier. So that's why Brock is so successful. If you're a big guy and you can just lay on Mark Hunt for 3 rounds and do, he did a little bit of damage, but really he won because he controlled. If you can do that, like you totally have the advantage. And Mark Hunt's a big boy too. But
he may have to cut as well.
Mark Hunt, I wouldn't be surprised, but he's a shorter guy though.
He's like 5'10".
He's just big. Yeah. How did we get on UFC from AJ Nakamura? Anyway, yeah, AJ Nakamura. I enjoyed that match. Got a little spotty for me towards the end, and I like the turn a lot, and I'm excited to see Nakamura on top. What about you? Did you have any other matches that stood out?
I was a huge fan of the one thing I was kind of shocked about. I was starting talking about two different things there at the same time.
I'll do both at the same time.
The women's battle royal. I
Yeah.
entirely forgot Naomi was in that match
Me too.
on the outside. I was
too.
hoping that they're going to turn Bayley heel, and that's the way to
Mhm.
do it. She eliminated her friend to win the match.
Yeah.
Naomi kind of had. I mean, I like Naomi or whatever. It's not anything against her. She had her moment last year where she came back and won the title.
I
Bayley
agree.
hasn't been doing that well in the main roster, and I'm a
Nope.
huge fan of Bayley. So I thought for sure I popped. I was like, yeah, she won
Mhm.
the battle royal, and it's a great way to lead into a feud because everyone assumed if someone was going to turn heel, it's going to be Sasha, right?
Yeah.
Not Bayley. I think Bayley as a heel is be really good,
interesting.
be really different change for her, and I thought that's where they finally went with it. And I was upset that Naomi came in and tossed Bayley out. I thought they finally gave her
Mhm.
her moment.
Yeah. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Poor
Yeah,
Bayley.
I mean, but maybe that's part of the story. Maybe they're going somewhere with that. She's
Maybe.
going to come out on Tonight and Raw and be like, maybe that's her breaking point.
Yeah.
She thought she won too, and she got screwed again. And tonight she's like, I've had enough. I've been the fan favorite for so long. I hug all you guys, but it's gotten me nowhere. Like I've been so hard to be the Bayley that you want it to be. Now I need the Bayley that I need to be the Bayley that I have to be to go back and win that women's title. You know what I mean? And like everyone,
that would be
like,
interesting.
whoa!
I'd enjoy to see that.
Like
That'd be a shock.
Kind of
for
what
sure.
they want Cena to do. But I think Bayley's at a position right now where it's really early on. It'll probably help her. She'll be a good heel and probably end up getting cheered. The Rock was a heel, got cheered.
Yeah.
The Miz right now, in my opinion, is the greatest performer on the roster. His promo,
I've agreed. I've believed that for a long time.
Amazing, and he's an excellent in-ring competitor, and he is so good. The crowd's turning him. They're going to start cheering for him. But he's
that's what we saw. We saw that last night
too, though. Eh?
Yep. We saw that last night.
The same thing will happen with Bayley. I think Bayley will turn heel, and eventually she'll get that face reaction again. But I think she needs she needs a change.
Yeah, I think really, I always questioned the decision last year to give her the title and have her win the title, the women's title, before WrestleMania.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. You end Charlotte's streak at Mania.
Yeah, exactly. And so they did a 4-way, which I think is a bit of a problem in WWE, that they feel we have to get everybody on WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So of course there's going to be 100 multi-man matches. Where last year I think it would have been much stronger for Bayley Charlotte WrestleMania. You could have built that because I believe she wanted that Fastlane.
Yeah, whatever the pay-per-view was before.
Yeah, it was Fastlane because SmackDown had Elimination Chamber last year, so it was Fastlane. So she wanted that Fastlane. If she didn't win that Fastlane, you would have had 2 months to tell that story, and you could show all this NXT footage and everything like that of she always comes this close and then loses. But instead they put it on her early, and I think that kind of squandered her momentum. And then she lost it. She had that awful feud with Alexa Bliss, and she's just been really stagnant.
Yeah, that was so weird because they're both so good. I don't know what happened with that. That was so strange.
I think it probably
they
just
didn't work well together. And that happens
that's it.
sometimes. Sometimes you get two guys in the ring that like work amazingly together for no reason, and then you get some people that just don't click. And I think that's probably why they've separated them for the last year, right?
Yeah. Like Cena Triple H, I think is an example of that. Like the WrestleMania 22 match, I was never a fan of. Whenever they matched up, I never liked it. I like and you know what? To that point, same with Triple H, Randy Orton.
Their match at WrestleMania. I mean, and I go back and look at it now. Shawn Michaels Hunter went on first, or Shawn Michaels Hunter.
Undertaker.
Shawn Michaels Undertaker went on first. You could have had the best match in the world that night. and it
Yep.
wouldn't have it wouldn't have gotten a reaction.
No. But also,
yeah,
they were
did
sort of
work out well
handicapped.
together. They worked together as a team amazingly well.
Oh yeah,
But
Evolution's one of my favorite stables.
as
I could watch
opponents,
their
they
stuff
didn't
all
really
day.
click.
Yeah. I think also in that WrestleMania match in particular, they were kind of handicapped by the stipulation, where it was no count out, no DQ.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, I'm sorry. That's not what it was. That's what it should have been. What it was if Triple H got counted out or disqualified, he lost the title.
Yeah, and I actually loved the build up to that, where he punted Stephanie and kissed Stephanie and did all that stuff. I don't know if he punted her, but he kissed her, right?
He DDT'd her, and then he kissed her. Yeah.
He punted Vince, right?
He punted Vince.
Yeah.
He had a great match with Shane at No Way Out. And then, for whatever reason, they did that stipulation. And also, Triple H was the one with the title.
Yeah.
Which always makes for...
it. He should have been, this guy's the champion attacking my wife, right?
Yeah. Always makes for a weird scenario when you have the babyface being the incumbent champion, and then the villainous heel trying to get the title.
Yeah.
And also, that brings to mind another thing that plays into last night's WrestleMania. Randy Orton won that Royal Rumble that year and lost at WrestleMania, and both members who won the Royal Rumble this year lost at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? The state of the Royal Rumble. We'll talk about that for a second.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought for sure they were both going to win. So it's kind of shocking, but I mean, it's the same thing as Money in the Bank. You can't have it 100% every time, right? Because then it gets too predictable. Next year, it can be like the Royal Rumble winner. He has a great chance to go main event WrestleMania, but it's not a guaranteed title win. You know what I mean? You're just going to get the fans interested. Because for the first, I don't even know how many years, whoever won the Rumble won the title at WrestleMania. It wasn't. Do you remember the first year that they didn't?
That they didn't win the title?
Yeah. Because Brett, they started with Yokozuna, and he technically won the title that year, but then Hogan came out and beat him.
Yeah.
Then it was Bret Hart and Lex Luger, and Brett won the title.
Yeah, Brett won. So maybe I guess you could say Lex, I suppose.
I guess Sean. Sean would have been the first, as I'm going.
Sean lost at 11.
95, yeah. But then he won it again the next year and won. And then, like, Austin
didn't get the match at 13.
No, he didn't get the match. Who did it? Oh, Sid. Sid got the match.
Well, Undertaker got the match. It was so Austin won that Rumble against Brett.
Yeah.
Sid was the champion because they did the deal. That was the Final Four, I believe, was that in your house.
Yeah.
And then Sid had the belt, and then Undertaker won it.
Right.
14, Austin won. 15,
Austin won.
16,
Triple H kept it, but who won the Rumble that year?
It was Rock.
Rock and the Big Show.
Deal with Big Show.
Yeah. So I guess maybe not. I was going back. I was thought that it happened every year.
That's pretty early, like not 95.
It happened the third time.
Yeah.
But I'm like going back in memory. If you would have asked me, I would have said every time until like sometime. But I guess not. But I guess that's you remember like the big moment. You remember the champion winning, right? The guy going in and winning the title.
That's right. But everybody always think of the Benoit run to the title where he wins the Royal. Oh, so good! Wins the Royal Rumble in great fashion, and then wins the celebration.
One of the best WrestleMania matches ever was that 3-way.
Oh, absolutely! I really like 20 top to bottom.
Yeah, I've even thought their next 3-way. You could make the argument that it was better than the one they did.
The one at Backlash,
Edmonton. Yeah, Edmonton. Like that match was fantastic as well.
That was a great Backlash, a great pay-per-view as well, because I had the great Orton McFoley match.
Yeah, I mean when he took those thumbtacks.
His reaction!
Sure Foley's going in the thumbtacks, right?
Yeah,
and then
his reaction
takes him no t-shirt.
Yeah. That might be honestly that could still be Randy Orton's best match.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm just trying to think of other.
What about Orton's match last night, the 4-way? I wasn't too big of a fan. It was fine.
The amazing thing for me in that match, there's 3 Canadians involved.
Yeah.
2 of them with very strong ties to the Maritimes. 1 with an extremely strong tie with the Maritimes. That match had Bobby Roode, Jinder Mahal, who's from Calgary, and Gerv, who's from Vancouver. But Gerv worked out here a ton from the late 2000s and I can't remember when the last time he was here was. Like 3 or 4 years, he was out here a lot. He worked with Mainstream Wrestling. He worked with East Coast Pro Wrestling. He did the Bret Hart exhibition show. And Bobby worked out here from like 98 to 2002.
I mean, Bobby was just here in 2015.
Yeah, but he worked here 7 days a week for like 5 years. Like during the Grand Prix run and Real Action Wrestling run. He came back for me in 2003. He came back for the second Maritime Cup in 2005. Came back for me again in 2006. Came back for East Coast Pro Wrestling in 2007. And then he came back for Wrestle Center in 2000, whatever year that was.
I think it was either 14 or 15.
He was a TNA champion at the time because I remember
he was.
He left the locker room and he I don't you weren't a part of it then, right? No, I was sitting. I got to know him pretty well over the years, right? Because he worked for me. I like filmed hundreds of shows that he's done. So I remember we were in the locker room talking, and he had to go to the ring and cut a promo or something, or just go and talk to somebody about something on the show. And he had the actual TNA title here with him. Did he wear it to the ring?
He did.
He did? Okay. He had the actual TNA title there with him. He left the locker room without the belt. I'm sitting there with the actual TNA title. I'm like, if I run right now, who's going to catch me? But it was pretty crazy to be sitting there like with that belt. And I remember him telling me, he's like, that company is so unorganized right now. They don't even know I have this. Like he had no idea. Like they weren't running regular shows at this point. He was like,
"No, that was during the.
Like, this is my TNA title now."
We get New Scott on Bound for Glory as the TNA champion.
I'm like, I do the CM Punk thing. Take the title home,
throw the
TNA title, put it in my fridge. You know what's funny? I wanted to do that with Dick Durning. When Dick won the title at Wrestle Center, I don't remember how many people I told this to or story to, or I might have even pitched it. I wanted to have Dick win the title, and he hand him the title, and then Dick is never ever coming back to Wrestle Center. That was the storyline. He was saying, "You're never going to see this belt again." But storyline-wise, like I left the building with Dick, I got in Dick's car and we drove away, type thing, right?
Yeah, we did a video and whatnot of you leaving the arena.
Yeah, and I've never seen that. I've been asking Jason to see that forever. I filmed some of it on my phone and sent it to them. Right?
I think that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah, I filmed that on my phone. I wanted to, but Mike Miles was out there with me. I don't know if any of his footage.
So there's footage somewhere in the ether of you and Dick getting into the car.
Well, I wanted, like, Dick was leaving. I left with him. And I thought if Dick isn't actually ever coming back, you could just say that, like, Dick gave me the title. And to come to the show with, you have someone come out and cut a promo and be like, we don't have our belt anymore. Because if I'm, like, Dick's guy, Dick's ref, like, I can be like, here's your belt. You know what I mean? And if Dick ever comes back, but what I wanted to do was I wanted Dick to give me the title, me take it home with me, and just go around town taking pictures of the belt in various places. Be like, look, hey JP, hey Wrestle Center, here's your title, come get it. It's at Citadel Hill. Oh look, it's on the way. Here's the belt eating at McDonald's. You know what I mean?
You know what's funny? Knowing Jason, I feel like he would have been all over that.
Yeah, I can't remember if I ever mentioned it to him. I told some people. I can't remember who I actually told.
That would be so in his wheelhouse because I could just imagine the vignettes of you could have someone all around Citadel Hill.
They didn't have to give me the title. Like Jason could have just been like, I could have given the title back to him, and he could have been like, here, like you're gonna go do it. But I thought me even having it, I could have took it to the gym with me in the morning. You know what I mean? And be like, hey JP, come to the gym. You never go to the gym, so the belt is safe here. You know what I mean? Like just fun things like that. Like I thought it would have been hilarious.
We have Chris Mint, right, who's like the de facto GM interviewer guy, sort of the Jeremy Borash of Wrestle Center, and you could have had him. We're on location at Citadel Hill. I'm getting back the title, and going up into the clock tower and
I thought of a lot of really funny things they could have done because JP takes a lot, like storyline-wise, JP takes a lot of slack for like not going to the gym and not looking like a pro wrestler or whatever, right? But that's part of his deal. That's why people don't like him. But I could have had the belt on a treadmill and been like, look, this belt has saw more cardio than your ex-champion. Like, I I was going to take it mini golfing with me. Like, I had so many ideas of things I could have done and then just showed up at the show and then been like a surprise, hey, I got your belt. And then JP could have like RKO'd me and took his belt back or something. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? I should get a pen and paper and start writing these ideas down because if Wrestle Center ever comes back, that'll be the first storyline I introduce. Will be New Scott as the runaway IFWA champion.
I don't know. I didn't want to be the champion. I just
I'm sorry, with the IFWA belt.
Dick's gone, but hey, look what he left me before he. Look what he gave me before he left, and it's a way for them to get their belt back, right? Yeah. Because if Dick wasn't never actually coming back, the belt was never going to come back. But they had me leave with him, so why not use it, right? Like, I just thought it would have been something really fun to do. Yeah.
I guess there's one more match that I want to touch on. Off the top of my head, the Daniel Bryan Shane versus Kevin Owens Sami Zayn match. What do you think of that?
That surprised me too. I thought Daniel was going to turn heel and screw Shane over, and that's how Sami and Kevin were going to get their jobs back. Because it wouldn't have mattered if you turned Daniel Bryan heel; they're still going to cheer for him.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you could have done it. You could have said, he didn't turn heel. He did what he thought was right, or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you could still keep him as mostly a baby face and just do, I had this one transgression where I made a choice. But I think we'll see them on Raw tonight is my guess.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I saw all of NXT TakeOver except for the main event yet. And I saw a tweet from Daniel Bryan yesterday where he wants Johnny Gargano. I'm assuming I don't actually know, but I'm assuming Johnny Gargano lost. So when he won,
I know he won.
Oh, did he? Okay. Yeah. I had absolutely no idea. I haven't seen any of it yet. Yeah. Just that one match I haven't seen yet. I watched the whole thing, just ran out of time. I didn't have time yesterday because WrestleMania was 7 hours. I plan to watch it today. But he wants Gargano on SmackDown.
I saw that too.
You're quickly going to see Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles. You're going to see Daniel Bryan versus Nakamura. You're going to see Daniel Bryan versus whatever indie guy is on that roster right now, like Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins. Like, those guys will tear the house down. Yeah,
I mean, there's all these matchups that we haven't gotten. Yeah, there's been an influx of this new talent since really WrestleMania 2015, 31. Which was his last WrestleMania match. I think he had that one tag team match against Sheamus on SmackDown. That was his last match. But there's been a huge influx of talent. So we're gonna, like you said, as soon as that tag match was over, I was thinking, well, just think of all the possibilities. Like you said, AJ, Nakamura, Rollins, etc. Really, you call up all the NXT indie guys. Let's have a Daniel Bryan Ricochet match. Let's go crazy. Why not? Who knows how long we have Daniel Bryan for? I'm always worried that whole match, and I probably the rest of his matches for the rest of time, I'm going to be worried. Like, oh, is he going to get hurt? Like, please don't hit your head. You know what I mean?
Kind of like the Ziggler thing there for a little while. Like when Ziggler left with a concussion, every time he took a bump, you thought he was dead after that.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you think of the tag match, though?
I thought it was okay. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Shane outside of the ring. Inside the ring, unless it's a hardcore match, I'm not that interested in. Yeah. Just like last year, AJ Shane, I wasn't that much of a fan of. Yeah. It was fine, but it was as good as you could be with Shane McMahon. I thought it was interesting that the injuries they gave him were diverticulitis. Yeah, and that was strange too. After being powerbombed, I guess he rapidly grew a bacterial infection overnight. Yeah. But it was fine. Daniel Bryan, I mean, he's one of my all-time favorites. I've been watching him since Ring of Honor days, so excited to see him back. I was somewhat surprised that they won, Daniel Bryan and Shane. I was kind of expecting Owens and Zayn to win, but it didn't totally shock me. Yeah. Just because I assume they'll be on Raw tonight. They'll turn up, and that'll be probably. Oh well. No, Brock won, so maybe. Well, that still could be Roman's program for a while. I could see that, Roman Owens with kind of Zayn as his sidekick.
Do you think Ember Moon will be called up to the main roster?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Because what they
Billy,
usually do like two matches, like they win and then they go back and have their rematch and then they get
yeah,
called up. But where she lost it like the day before or the day before Mania, you think she'll be on Raw or SmackDown now?
yeah, probably. I think Billy Kay and Peyton Royce are probably due to be called up soon,
Yeah,
and give them. I mean, I feel like they do have unfinished business in NXT, but the NXT brass doesn't seem very interested in putting them in a key spot,
yeah,
and I definitely don't see them matching up well with like Shayna Baszler.
right.
Um, that's actually an interesting topic. Like, who do you see next for Shayna Baszler? Kairi Sane and run that back from the tournament?
Probably.
Is there any new people that they brought in? I don't know. I don't think like a Dakota Kai. I don't really see.
Not really yet. I mean, the biggest name they have there would be Kairi Sane that they haven't done
Yeah,
anything with yet.
yeah,
And I think it kind of has to be her, right? Because
yeah,
she'd be their next big like women's star. I mean,
yeah,
she's a star. She's a huge star in Japan, but
yeah,
that would be their next big thing. I think I can't think
yeah.
of anyone else right now off the
I
top
mean,
of my head.
is Candice LeRae signed?
I think so.
To,
I think
yeah,
so.
because I remember reading a report a while back that she was signed,
Yeah.
but I always take reports with a grain of
Yeah, I
salt.
never believe
So
anything unless I actually hear it from somebody that like knows her or works there or
right,
something along
yeah,
those lines. It's just like
exactly.
whatever.
So I mean, she was all over the pre-show
Yeah,
for Takeover.
yeah.
So I assume she's signed. So maybe she could get involved. But they seem
They need to build
like
her
she's
up
very
more first, though. I
well. That's the
think.
thing.
Yeah,
She's very paired off with Gargano,
yeah.
and I haven't really watched NXT in a long time either. So maybe I don't even know if she's had a singles match.
She
Um,
was in the Mae Young Classic, right?
I believe so. Okay. So,
I
but she
think
didn't
that's
get
where she
far. I
came
don't
in
think.
from. I
I don't think
think.
she got far,
No,
if I'm
I
not
don't.
mistaken.
I don't remember. I basically watched Serena's matches and
Yeah.
Shayna's matches. That's the most. I mean,
Yeah.
I did watch them all, but I didn't really like sit there and be like. I was more. I did watch them all, but I was more invested in
Yeah.
Serena's matches and Shayna's matches. Huge fan of both of those people, so that's
Yeah.
where my attention was drawn. Right.
Yeah. Of course.
Mercedes Martinez. I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan of hers as well. I thought she did really good. I thought of everyone that was there. I thought she's worked so hard on the Indies for so long. I thought
Hmm.
she deserved it. They kind of gave her the Ibushi role in the tournament.
Yeah.
Get over the younger guys and then lose in the semis because you're not
Yeah.
signed, right?
Yeah. That's true. I'd almost be interested in seeing someone go down to NXT
I thought that
and
would have been a good thing to do with Ziggler, like because
yeah.
he'd crush it down there. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Or like on just on the top of my head, like she's done it already, so you probably don't want to do it with her. But like a Natalia,
yeah.
I think she could match up well with Shayna Baszler,
Yeah,
someone like that.
and that would help Shayna Baszler get better too.
Yeah, because she's only been wrestling a couple of years, so
Yeah, she's only ever done a few indies. It's not like she's been
yeah.
booked like all the time everywhere.
No, no.
She's done Shimmer and she's done a few other randoms. But
Yep.
in my opinion, Natalia for what you have on television talent wise, Natalia is
Mhm.
the best in ring
Yeah,
performer. They have there bar none.
yeah,
So if you
I agree.
send her back to NXT to work with Shayna, it would just make Shayna look like a star. Because now you
Yep.
could go out there and wrestle with this phone, and it could main
Yeah,
event a show. Like that.
yeah,
That's just my opinion.
yeah. And I mean, you just send her down there. She has a couple matches with, women that they're not too invested in.
Yep.
Beats them, and then there you go. There's her few. She doesn't even have to have a match with anybody else
Yeah.
if they didn't want to. She could show up on. I think could give her the Mickey James treatment of taking a selfie video.
Yeah.
And then being like, I'm going to face you at Takeover,
Yeah.
and then there's your match.
Yeah.
If they needed a stopgap until they get to Kairi Sane.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if they hold that off till SummerSlam.
Kairi Sane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah, she's just going to have like the random matches with the random women until then. You think on like
Yeah.
take on NXT, unless
if
they
they
bring someone
don't-
else in, they could bring in
Yeah.
like another big name. I mean, there's
Yeah.
not a ton of them. They could bring in Mercedes again because I think she's Shayna beat her in the semis to go to the finals. I
Yeah.
think that they could bring her back. There's a lot of different things they could do, but they don't have like that big. They don't have like the Charlotte, the Becky, the Sasha, the Bailey,
That's right.
where you could just run all four of them all the time, right?
I think what we could see is if they do go to if they do hold off Kairi Sane till SummerSlam, and then I believe they said they're going to do another Mae Young Classic. Am I wrong on that?
I didn't hear anything, but that doesn't mean anything.
Maybe that was wrong.
It could very well
if they do, though, if they do,
I hope they do.
I could see.
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see. Just sort of mapping it into my mind off the top of my head, I could see Kairi Sane winning at SummerSlam, and then I could see a new heel brought in from the Mae Young Classic, probably the winner, to match up with her.
Right.
I could see that going down. But it wouldn't surprise me if they just jumped to Kairi Sane.
Yeah.
What do you think about the NXT title right now? Because in my opinion, that's way at the back of the NXT landscape.
Yeah, it used to be the exact opposite. I mean,
I know.
I wouldn't have put it on. I'm a huge fan of the guy that had it, and
Almas and Black.
Almas, yeah. I'm a huge fan of Almas, and I'm a huge fan of his valet, Selena.
Selena Vega.
I know her as Rosita. Huge fan.
Probably know her as Thea Trinidad.
Yeah. Huge fan. It's Sarah's old tag team partner. Huge fan of those two. I would have kept it on him. He's so good. You didn't necessarily have to have Aleister Black lose. They could have had a DQ or something, and then drag that out a little bit longer. But yeah, I mean that may have been the first time a title match didn't close it. I know they closed it one time with a tag team title match in Toronto, but that was the first time that a title match didn't close it. I mean, and they no reason why. I know Gargano and Ciampa had that big build or whatever, but that's still your title match should always go on last, in my opinion.
I agree. I think unless you have something that transcends the organization, then it shouldn't. It's like a Rock Cena. Yeah. I understand going last.
And I even understood Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker.
I agree because Shawn and Undertaker are sort of the fabric of the WWE, at least in the WWE tells us. So something like that, I agree, goes on last. Like the title should always go on last, but it shouldn't. And I don't think Gargano Ciampa was the right match to.
No, because it kind of like diminishes. I don't know if diminish is the right word, but Aleister's Black title win wasn't the last thing you saw. Like him beating Almas should have been the last thing that you saw if they want him to be the big bad new champion, right? Like, that's just how I like it to go. Yeah. I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to that. Yeah. I love to see the title match go on fast, and I hate it when the champion comes out first.
Me too. Which they were all over the place at WrestleMania.
I'm like,
you had them coming out first and last.
The first time I remember that happening was Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man Randy Savage, WrestleMania 5, and Jesse Ventura lost his mind on commentary. Sold it brilliantly. The champion comes out last. Savage was the champion, came out first. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. It's just one of those things that
they want the babyface coming out last. Yeah. Because it's harder for the babyface to get the crowd if the heel comes out second. Yeah. And that's why they do it, but I hate it. If the heel's the champion, the heel deserves the respect to come out last. Like MMA, the champion comes out last. Like a champion should always come out last. Respect the title. Respect the title.
I agree, and it always annoyed me. And I'm with you. I do believe that strongly. And it always annoyed me when Undertaker would always come out last because of the entrance. And I remember like WrestleMania 23. How old was I? Anyway, I was young. I was like maybe 11 or something like that. WrestleMania 23, Batista came out first, and Batista was one of my boys. Yeah. And it annoyed me to no end that Undertaker came out last. It's just one of those things. But
they do that to get the shot of the guy in the ring looking scared as the Undertaker.
I know.
Down, right?
And
but I agree fully. If Batista was the champion going in, which he was, he should have came out last.
Yeah. And I know as a wrestler, it's probably fun to play the scared scared of the Undertaker. Like you always get
those guys
looking around
in the ring to watch the Undertaker's entrance. They're like, please let me go in first. I want to see this.
I'm sure. Yeah. But it's just I do think the champion should go at last. But what I'm more thinking of is that Almas and Aleister Black, the two guys who are in the NXT main title scene, I feel like they're two of the guys on the roster that have the least hype. Like if you look at that TakeOver show, Adam Cole. Well, actually, I could go even broader than that. The North American Champion match had all the new top fresh faces in NXT. Adam Cole main evented. Was it the last TakeOver War Games? He main evented that one. And Almas, I don't think he's main evented a TakeOver, unless was that one with Gargano the main event, or was that War Games? I always get that mixed up.
I don't remember. Didn't he main event against?
You know what? It was
McIntyre.
No, I think that was War Games.
Was that War Games?
I think that might have been. No, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, regardless, well, you can look it up. Yeah, absolutely. But what I'm trying to say is that the NXT main title seems so cold to me compared to the North American title, even the women's title. The tag titles are locked with the Adam Cole Undisputed Era thing, and then the Gargano and Ciampa. So I'm sort of worried about that NXT title now. And as well with the introduction of the North American title, like NXT's not that big of a roster. They only have a 1 hour show.
To answer your I know it's crazy. To answer your question, War Games was in November.
Okay.
And that did close the show.
Yeah.
NXT TakeOver Philadelphia was in January, and Almas and Gargano.
They main evented. Yeah. Okay. So was the Drew McIntyre Almas won the War Games then?
Must have been.
I think so. I don't think he's had a defense other than Gargano at a TakeOver.
Let me see. Scroll.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, Drew McIntyre and Almas was the co-main that night.
Yeah. So another one where the championship didn't go on last. Although with War Games,
you get it. Yeah.
I can get it.
It's on VIP here.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
Let's get away from there for a minute just before we close this out here. Your thoughts on the huge upcoming UCW tour? I haven't seen you at a show in.
No, I haven't been to many.
Show you were at?
Oh gosh, the last indie show I was at.
Was it Wrestle Center?
Was it Wrestle Center last March?
Tommy Dreamer, was that the last show?
That was the last Wrestle Center show.
Yeah.
That can't be right though. I must have been at one.
What kind of fan are you?
It would have been sometime. I know, right? Awful. Someone take away my fan card.
That's right.
It would have been sometime last year. And I haven't been to many. It's a combination of school mostly.
Right.
I'm a university student, so
I guess that's important.
Yeah, that kind of takes priority. Yeah. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm working so I can pay to go to university.
Right.
So a lot of times, unfortunately, like indie wrestling just isn't in my budget most months.
Right. Do you still follow it though, like online? Or
whatever? Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm in all the groups. I see everything. Yeah. I'm probably gonna go to that UCW Halifax show.
Yeah.
Just because, holy crap! Like what a series of events for them.
Yeah.
You go from having that one show with Tony Atlas and Ellsworth and everybody, and then all of a sudden WWE comes to town, and then you go the night before and you're in opposition with them, and you get two of the biggest indie names on the scene right now. Like holy crap! Like much respect to UCW for pulling that off. I think that looks like it's going to be a really fun tour to go to.
Yeah, I almost wish we were getting. I mean, as much of an amazing match as Bate and Dunn is going to be, the night before in Moncton, Marcus Burke.
We don't use that name anymore.
I will never not call him anything but Suave. I can't. I knew him as Suave for like 10 years before he became Marcus Burke, right?
Yeah.
Marcus Burke is going against Pete Dunne, and Marco Estrada is going against Tyler Bate. And I don't know who Dick's wrestling, but Dick's wrestling Swagger in Halifax. But I wish we were getting those two matches instead of those two guys. I get Halifax is the bigger town or whatever you want to put the WWE talent on or whatever, but I would much rather see Burke and Dunn and Marco and Bate as opposed to them wrestling each other. I mean, that triple threat in Halifax, Dukes, Marco, and Suave is going to be amazing. It's going to like tear the house down. And in my opinion, just because Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate are the WWE guys, UCW needs to close the show with that three-way match for their championship because it makes it seem so much more important. Your title is on the same show as unless WWE doesn't want their title not going on last. If your title on the same show as the current WWE Championship belt going on after that as your main event makes it seem so huge. I
agree.
My opinion.
While I'm interested in like Pete Dunne versus who's Pete Dunne facing again? Sorry, in
Halifax?
In Moncton.
Oh,
no, in Moncton.
Marco.
Okay, so as much as I like that and Bate against Marcus Burke, I sort of like the idea of not having them locked in against the champion. Because Marco's the champion, if I'm correct.
In UCW, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I like the idea
so the champion
of not
doesn't have to lose. Is that why?
So I won't name names, but
I'll name names if I know your story.
in certain indie companies around the Maritimes and probably around the world, I'm sure it's a problem many face.
Guys when you bring say they can't lose.
When you bring in a big name, odds are they don't want to take the pin. And if you put them against your champion, then you get some chicanery in the main event. And I'm always pretty sour on chicanery in the main event, especially when it's a big name. I like to see the match and have the match have an ending.
But you know what? That doesn't happen all that often. That's only happened from my perspective in WrestleCenter. AJ comes in, can't lose.
I mean, I didn't want to name names, Scott, but I guess we'll say it.
I'm not blaming WrestleCenter.
No, I know.
Shelton Benjamin comes in, can't lose. Matt Sydal comes in, doesn't want to lose. I filmed Mike Hughes against Eugene. Mike Hughes went over. I filmed Mike Hughes against Al Snow. Al Snow went over. There's no reason why your guy can't come in here and lose. I'd love to think our territory is massive and known worldwide. Nobody's going to know. Nobody in Japan is going to know that JP Sims beat AJ Styles. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not like, oh, New Scott's YouTube channel. Let's go. Like, AJ, that doesn't
Maybe
happen.
they are.
As much as I would love that to happen, that doesn't happen. Nobody would have known if AJ Styles beat JP Sims beat AJ Styles. Christopher Daniels wanted to lose clean. And so he lost. Like, he put over JP Sims. That's the right thing to do. Matt Sydal came in with the exact opposite. He's like, I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose. And he lost, but he did not want to lose. Like, and it's stupid. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not real. It's a show. The bad guy in Die Hard doesn't go to the director. Bruce Willis can't kill me tonight, guys. I'm sorry. Like, it doesn't happen.
That's part of the circus that is wrestling. Is that
those guys take themselves so seriously. Chris Jericho,
it's not real, but
world champion to never win a match. You know what I mean? Like, Chris Jericho loses 99% of his matches. He has a
and he uses the same. Like on his podcast, he says all the time the same thing you just said. Where if you're an actor, his analogy is always if you're an actor in Saving Private Ryan 2 and you go to Steven Spielberg and you're like, I don't think I can die on Normandy tonight. It's not going to work.
You're fine. Get out of here.
Exactly. They just find someone else, right? But that's the thing where, when you have a big name, it's intimidating. And I guess maybe that just comes with experience as a promoter, how you can navigate those waters, which I'll just say right now, like WrestleCenter, when it was started, there wasn't a whole lot of experience for the promoters, and they really learned as they went along. And I think they did a commendable job learning as they went.
And I'm not working with people bash WrestleCenter all the time. I had a blast working there. I talked to Jason, not all the time, but on a fairly regular basis. I'll send him a message and be like, please run more shows. Please run more shows. I love it, and I would go back tomorrow if he ran a show and would have me. Me saying that the talent doesn't lose has nothing to do with WrestleCenter. It has to do with the talent coming in. Jason can't go tell AJ Styles, like, you're going to lose or go home, because AJ Styles, if he did leave, then he's screwing his own show, because the fans aren't going to get to see AJ Styles like they were promised, right? So
that's right.
Jason and Tyler were stuck. They can only do so much with the talent that they had that are here. They're going to let them do.
But and that's what I mean when you have more experience. I think you might be you would know this. I mean, you've ran shows. Yeah. You can sort of know what might be an issue and sort of nip it in the bud before it starts. Like you mentioned with Al Snow and Eugene. Yeah. You know.
Like Raven lost to Troy in Halifax. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, that's their job.
No, I agree, 100%.
100%. I mean, I haven't booked huge names outside of Bobby Roode. Yeah. Like, all my shows were all local. The last show I ran, Bobby Roode wasn't even announced. He came in on a couple days' notice for me because Pete got injured. But not one conversation did we ever have beforehand. I've booked him multiple times. Not a single time did he was in TNA the last time, but not a single time did he ever ask me what he was doing on the show, who he was wrestling, if he was going to lose or win, what was going on. The day of the Cup, the last time, he came in and he's like, so what am I doing tonight? I'm like, oh, it's a tag match, and where it's an elimination tag, where the last two guys in the ring face off for the title. And I'm like, you and Gary are on the same team. The storyline is going to be you and Gary are on the team, and you're facing Duke McIsaac and Trash Canyon, and you guys are actually going to eliminate both of them, and then you're going to, because Gary and Bobby have like this storied history. I wanted to have their match on my show. So you guys are going to, as a team, you're going to have to square off. And Gary's going to go over and win the title. Yep. Okay, no problem. Thanks.
Yeah. No, that was
the extent of the conversation.
Yeah.
Like, literally the only thing he asked me to do, he's like, I need a hockey stick. Can you go find me? Because he was in Team Canada at the time, and the flag on the stick.
Oh,
like, Can you find me a hockey stick? That's all I need. I'm like, okay, great. Like, literally, and the first show I ever ran, he wrestled for me 3 times in the same night. Yeah. He never asked, like, anything. He's like, well, what? And the booking of that original show was different. He was losing in the semis to, like, a guy that nobody had ever heard of. And he was like, yep, no problem. And then we switched it because Mike was like, here's what you want to do to make your show good. I'm like, okay, what? He's like, do this, 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 and this. He's like, it's not that far off from what you want, but if you switch this one thing, I'll lose to this guy, and then we'll switch it where this guy gets injured and we come back, and the storyline's great. So he only changed, like, technically 2 things on the show, but those 2 things made the show amazing, right? But Bobby was like, yeah, I'll lose, no problem. You want to lose me in the first round? I'll lose in the first round. I don't care. Yeah. No, nothing. Didn't matter, right? And that's how it should be.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. 100%.
Like Brody Steele, he's billed at like 6'8", 320 pounds. He's won like 3 matches in the Maritimes in the last 10 years. Like, he doesn't care. He should be the guy that's going out and killing everybody. But, like, he understands you don't need to win to get over. His job now is, like, to get people over, and he does it with a smile on his face, right? Yeah. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird to me.
It's,
Tommy Dreamer put over Matt Bullen.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Could care less about it. Like,
yes, he did. Yeah, I hope we can run more shows, WrestleCenter. I hope we get things sorted out and we can come back. I know, like, I still have the social medias. I still run that. I know I haven't posted in a long time. I think that's part of just, we're on hiatus. I can only promote the same voltage so much. Yeah. So I've just sort of stopped posting for a while. But I still get messages all the time like, when's WrestleCenter coming back? WrestleCenter, come to this place or that place. People still want it. I think, more wrestling is good wrestling. Mm-hmm. But to go back to your question about UCW.
I don't even remember my question. Oh, okay.
UCW, yeah. I'm really excited for that show. I think it's going to be really good, and I will probably be there.
Awesome.
At the Halifax one.
Awesome. I hope to see you there.
Is there VIP still available? Is it sold out?
I don't know, but I'm sure you can probably. I don't know if VIP ever actually sells out. Um,
Gotcha. We've
sure
had that same problem at
they'll
Wrestle
add
Center a
more
couple of
chairs.
times.
Like they put up the charts and stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe it's real, but I could not imagine being a promoter and being like, well, these seats are $10, but if we add these extra row back here, those are now $50. They're like, and you want to buy the $50 tickets? I could not imagine like, we'll add an extra row. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know
Exactly.
if VIP tickets are available, but I couldn't imagine they're going to limit the amount of money they can make. That's just my opinion, but maybe they have a certain
you're probably
seating
bang
thing.
on.
Maybe they have a
I don't know.
certain seating that they have to abide by. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Message Mike Miles on Facebook for you.
I will. I'm sure he'll look me up. I'm sure he'll look me up
on that. But me, I could never, unless your building is legitimately sold out.
No, you're absolutely right.
Never ever happens. You should always be able to get tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, I say never ever happens. The closest I've seen it coming in years, and it's not a big venue, but the closest I've seen it coming in years was the New Breed show on March 24th. We had, I don't know, 150, 200 chairs set out for the show. They lined up down the parking lot, down the street into Burt. We were scrambling to find chairs for these people. We moved the chairs closer to the ring. We took the chairs from the locker room because it's a little town hall in Burt. There was nowhere. People were standing. It was the biggest crowd I'd ever seen in that building. And we literally ran out of chairs. Like, and that's never happened before. Like that, or I mean, that's happened before, but that does not happen very often. Yeah. Sure, them running out of chairs is probably 300, 350 people, not 2,000 like they'll probably get in Spryfield in a bigger arena. But in those bigger arena shows, you want to pack as many people in there as possible. So I don't imagine
never limit how much money you can make.
Tickets.
Like, no, that doesn't make any sense from a business standpoint.
But I don't run the promotion. I have no idea. Maybe they have a fire code they have to adhere to. I'm quite certain we broke the fire code into Burt. But maybe the rink is like, you can only sell this many tickets. Yeah. Maybe they're stricter on the fire code or police or whatever, right? Like I have no idea. I've never ran Spryfield, so they could have a certain number that they have to stick to, and then that's their sellout number, right? Because if the fire department shows up and like, you can only have 1,500 people here, and if you had 1,505, they're going to shut your show down. And that's not worth it. You sell your 1,500, and that's it, right?
That's right. So yeah, UCW, Mike Miles, if you're watching this, I'll be hitting you up for a ticket. My laptop is actually going to die, so I think it's going to do it.
Anyway, but do you have anything you want to plug, like social media?
You can follow me. I've switched up my Twitters a little bit. It's just sort of a professional thing. So I'm no longer at MavMeyer1. I'm now Mav_movies. Okay. If you want to follow me there, you can follow me there. I do a bunch of movie reviews. That's sort of been my hobby lately. I've got a website, www.mavmovies.com. I do a bunch of reviews of just films I see. You can follow me there. Check that out. That'd be really awesome. I really like doing them, so hopefully you guys enjoy them.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking out the time to do this video podcast interview, whatever the heck I do.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. All right. Have a good one.
Worries. You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.